So today I would like to go ahead and make our first Python program. So a common Python program that a program in any language that people start out with is usually a hello world program, which is just simply a program that prints the phrase hello world on the screen. We're going to try to go a little bit better than that. We're going to make one called hello user. And hello user is going to ask the person running the program a few questions, and it's going to reply to their questions and give customized responses. So, in order to get started, all right, since we are working virtually right now, I want to use this website called CodeHS. This way, we can save our work in the cloud, and you'll be able to do the coding on your program without on your Chromebook without installing anything special on your computers yet. So I am at the CodeHS website, and I'm going to go ahead and log in using my school Google account. So I'm already logged into Google, and you guys don't even need to make an account. You already have an account for this class, so you just can go log in with Google as well. It might prompt you to enter a class code. I'm not sure. All right. So I'll give you that in the assignment description. All right. So anyway, when you log in, you're going to see something like this. It might list classes. It should list our class here, I think. I'm not sure what the student interface looks like, but if not, don't worry about it. And the place we're going to do our coding is going to be the sandbox up here in the upper left. And so don't worry about the courses and sections and all that kind of stuff. All right. Sandbox is just the place where you get to write programs that do whatever you want. So I'm going to go to sandbox. And at this point, I think I need to get out of the way. So let me close myself out here. And we'll go ahead and make our first program. So the first thing we're going to do is name our program. I'm going to call mine hello user. And when you click create program, you have this selection of programming languages you can use. So in this course, we're going to use Python 3. And I'll click create program here. And so we'll be taken to this screen. Get that out of the way. Taken to the screen, and this leftmost panel here is going to be the list of files in the project. In this case, we only have one file, and it's called main.py. The py stands for Python, so we know it's a Python file. Right, just like docx means it's a Word doc, and xls means Excel. Right, the file extension tells what kind of program it is, what kind of file it is. So this is a Python file. It contains Python computer code. And the middle, this is the actual code. And when we create a project, they give us one line of code in there by default, and it prints hello world. And then over here, this is the place where we're going to see the output of our program. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the run button. And you can see that this statement prints the phrase hello world on the screen. All right, but we can do a little bit better than that. Okay, so I said we were going to do hello user, so I'm going to change this a little bit. And let's look at another concept called a variable. So I'm going to go ahead and make a variable called name. And I'm going to go ahead and type my name in it. And actually, okay, I'll use single quotes. Okay, it doesn't matter what you use. Okay, and instead of printing hello world, let's try printing name. And so we'll save it. And actually, yeah, we'll run it and say, okay. Okay, and now it printed my name on the screen. So what happened here? Well, the statements of this program get executed in order. And so this very first statement takes the phrase John Cooper, and it stores it in a variable called name. This just means there's a place set aside in the computer's memory that is literally holding the information, the letters John Cooper. You'll see later this is called the string variable. It's a sequence of characters, all right, in quotation marks. This is a string, and this is a variable. So this is just the location in memory that's holding this information. And we always give variables an identifier so that we can access the contents later, right? So the first line of code doesn't actually get any output on the screen. The second one, when you see name in here, it goes to the variable called name and will print the contents of that on the screen. So let's see if we can make this output a little bit better right now. So now I'm going to say, instead of saying hello name, I'm going to type hello, comma, quotes, and plus name, and save this and run it. Okay, and now I've got my little sentence on the screen where it combined these things, these parts. So let's take a look a little bit more closely at this print statement. What you're going to see here is this part of it, the word hello with the comma, is in quotation marks. And when something is in quotation marks, it means it's going to get in a print statement. It means it will literally get printed. And then we have the word name here, the identifier, and notice how it is not in quotation marks. And so that means the computer is going to look for a variable called name and print the contents here instead. Now, when we want to connect something literal in quotes with something that's a variable, the way we do it is with a plus operator. So if I were to delete that and try to run it, okay, you'll see it says we get this error. Syntax error just means like a grammar error, and it says invalid syntax because it doesn't make sense to have a variable just immediately after a quotation mark. So I'll go back and change that. All right. So let's see if we can do a little bit better than this. So let me run this, make sure it works again. Okay. Something that we can notice right away is that you can see that the comma and the J in my name are just mushed together. And I have spaces around the plus here. All right. But these don't really do anything aside from making the code readable. If I literally want a space printed on the screen, I need to go inside the quotation mark and put a space in there. And now, right, and now we get nicer output. Okay. But let's do a little bit better, because right now this program, every time I run it, is always going to do the exact same thing. But what if somebody else wants to use our program? Right? So I'm going to change, instead of storing John Cooper in name, I'm just going to say, I'm going to use another Python function called input. And have it say, what is your name? And so I'm going to save this. And you can, so the question we're going to ask is in quotation marks. So let's save it and run it and watch what happens. So it says, what is your name? And we have the cursor here, so I get to type whatever I want. So I'll type my name in. And then it says, hello, John. And if I were to run it again, my last name in. Okay, so now you can see that this program is going to give different output, right, every time we run it. Let's see. That looks kind of weird with the question mark mushed up against the output there. So what I'm going to do is just make sure it prints a blank space after the question mark. And that way when we run it, yeah, right, the output looks a little bit, nicer. Okay. So now let's go to this print statement here. And, instead of just saying hello name, I'm going to go back into quotes. So I'm going to do a plus sign, and let me do a punctuation mark to finish that sentence. And I've got my font kind of large so it works well in your when you watch a video of this. Okay, so if we have a statement like this where we're in quotes and we want to print something literally, and then we want to insert a variable into the sentence, we can, right? We just connect it with a plus, and then if we want to go back into quotations again, we just use a plus and then do more quoted values. Okay, so run it. And now we get a nicer, right, nicer sentence. Um, so let's ask something else, right? So I'll do, and I'm going to hit a blank line here because blank lines are nice in programming. We're going to use them to separate out kind of blocks of code that perform different tasks. So I'm going to say place equals input. I'll say where you live. Space there. And I'll print something like and it'll print another sentence with that in there. And so we'll run it. I live in Greenville. And you can see that we get, right, that we get the output. I'm going to go ahead and make my output font size just a little bit tinier, maybe here, so I have a little bit more room. Okay. So let's think about some other things we can do, right? So, maybe we don't want the computer to say, oh, I love place no matter what you say. So one of the things that we can do is actually make programs that conditionally decide what task to accomplish. So I asked for the place, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a line that begins with if, and I'll say place, and I'm going to say it's equal to, but the way I'm going to say is equal to is by typing two equal signs together, and the place is equal to Greenville, and then I'm going to do a colon, right? And I'm going to tab this over. And so what's going to happen is the computer now is only going to print I love place if the place happened to be with Greenville. So what this line does is it checks to see if the place variable is containing the exact phrase Greenville, and then it'll say I love that place. So I'll run it. And so John Greenville, and says I love Greenville. But if I were to run it again, and I'll say I'm from Malden instead, and you can see that it didn't do this statement. All right, so well, maybe there's something we want to do. Some kind of other response we want to give for any other cities. So what I'm going to do is backspace so that I am, all right, even with the if again, and I'm going to type else print, and I'll just say that's interesting. And something, well, so I'm going to deal with something else. I'll say that is interesting for now, and then we'll deal with that. That's interesting. I'd like, oops, I want to visit. So we'll make the sentence that says, that's interesting. I want to visit place someday. And so, so when we run this now, now the lines are wrapping here, but understand, see how it's still on line 9. This is one long line of code, and it's just wrapping. All right. So sometimes if the code wraps, it can get a little bit confusing to keep up with what lines are doing what. But so type in my name. do you live? Okay, so I live in Alden. And now it says, that's interesting. I want to visit there someday. Whereas if you said Greenville, it would say, oh, I love Greenville. All right. So now what we see is we can make, right? We can make computers act, all right, behave conditionally. I'm going to click this so I can see the file explorer again. Okay. Let's look at how we can make a little bit more complex, right, branching of statements here. And so I'm going to ask fave thing. I'm going to make a new variable called favorite thing, or fave thing is good enough. Notice how, variable names, you can make them almost whatever you want, but there are some rules. They have to begin with a letter, usually. There's a couple of other characters they can begin with, but generally they're going to begin with a letter. Variable names, we always do them in all lowercase letters. You'll see why that's important later, but right now, just kind of get in that habit of only using lowercase letters. And if what you're trying to do, if the information you're trying to collect is something that might be described well with more than one word, then you can just use an underscore to separate, right? To separate the words out. So I'm making this variable called favorite thing or fave thing, and I'll say input. What is your favorite thing to do in? And I'm going to go outside of the quotes and do a plus, and we'll access that place variable again. Question mark in the quotes there, right, for the grammar. And so now let's make it react to that. So one thing I could do is I could say if, so we'll do something different. Here I check to see if, the response was exactly equal to, some certain word. But now they might be giving me maybe a sentence answer. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. And I'm going to say if outdoors in, and you can see the purple words are, these are keywords in the programming language. So if a word lights up purple, it means it has some special meaning. In fave thing. All right, so now we're going to look to see if the word outdoors is anywhere in their response to favorite thing. Then we're going to say, we'll print, and I'll just do I am quite outdoorsy myself. And I can go else print. I'll just say that sounds like fun. That'll be my default response. Okay, so let's try this. And I'll say I like to hike outdoors. And I hit enter. And so what the computer did on this line right here is it looked through my favorite thing, my response, which is stored in this favorite thing variable. And since the word outdoors is in it, it provided this response. If the word outdoors was not in my response, it would have said this instead. Okay, but what if there's more than two options, right? Maybe we can expand this statement so it checks for more things than just outdoors. So I'm going to do another branch, and I'll say if art in fave thing, and let's do actually should be not if, but this should be lf. And else if is just a contraction of the words else and if. It's else if, but it's combined as one statement. So if this is true to this, and this is like otherwise, if this happens to be true, if art is in favorite thing, we'll define something else to do. So we'll say and something's a little bit weird here. So see how I tried to type the contraction I'm, and the color of this stuff doesn't match. It's not blue like everything else. And what's happening is, right, quotation marks are used to begin and end strings that we would like printed. And here, what has happened, and if I try to run this, you'll see we just get an error. It says syntax error, invalid syntax. And what happens is this quote right here after the I paired up with this one right here, and it got to the M, and it didn't make any sense what it was supposed to be. So what we can do, we have a couple solutions to this. All right. One is I can just put, right, Python is not picky about big quotes or double quotes and single quotes. So I'll just change that to a double quote. And then the single quote inside. So now the print statement begins with a double quote. It'll end with a double quote, and we can print that single quote in the inside. There are some other solutions, but this will get us through for now. So I could go in here and, like, if I wanted to change this one to double quotes, then I could say that's interesting, and we can use a contraction there as well. Okay, so basically, you can use single quotes or double quotes. It doesn't really matter. Just be consistent with what's at the beginning and what's at the end, and So I use double quotes if I feel like I'm probably going to need single quotes on the inside. Otherwise, I tend to use single quotes. All right, so if art is in favorite thing, let's do that. So this run. Okay. Greenville, I like going to art museums. And you can see that we get a different response. And now when we're doing this, we could come up with as many elifs if we want. Okay, so I'll just copy and paste that, and so sports. And so sports is in your response, and then my computer might say, I'm a big okay, so it'll give us some kind of response like that. And so we can just connect as many of these as we want. The only thing you have to make sure of is that the if, it always has this block of conditional statements. If has to be the first one, and then subsequent ones, that if there's a condition, it's going to be elif, and the final one can be else. You can't have an else followed by an elif. Else has to be last. If has to be right. If has to be first. So anyway, I'll do one more thing on this, and let's just do a print. Let's call it I am. I'll use double quotes because I want to say I'm. Pybot 5000 this is my Python robot 5000. And we'll do let's chat. And so let's save this, and I'll run the program. And so there's a little bit more we can do here, and that is, okay, so we got the, where do I live, Greenville, sports, and all right, so that's the end of the program. All right, so let's clean up the output a little bit here. Let's see. I think in between little sentences, all right, what I'd like to do is have blank lines. So I'm going to go ahead right here. And if you do a print statement with nothing in quotes, right, it'll give you a blank line. So I think I would like a blank line after the initial sentence here. We'll do another blank line after it asks us our name. Do a blank line after this place bit of code. And see, and I'll do one after the favorite thing bit of code, and then let's just do a print statement that says, hi, nice talking with you, and let's refer to my name again. Okay. So a couple final things on here, and that is, all right, when I write code, what I tend to do is I like to take chunks of code that perform a related task, and I just put them on consecutive lines. So here's kind of the startup. Those are consecutive lines. Here's what's your name. I grouped the place stuff together, the favorite things stuff together, right? And then the goodbye stuff together. And I like to put blank lines between sections to help with readability. All right. Another thing we can do is we can put comments in our code, and comments, right, don't are statements that don't get executed. They're notes for somebody who's reading the code so they know what's going on. And so this is going to be my introduction. Here, and then let's do a little comment, and we'll just begin the comments with a hashtag. And so any line that begins with a hashtag is skipped when you hit the run button. We'll ask for the name. Then we can ask place. And then we can ask about an activity. And then we can say, let's see, oh, end the program. So the end program is this little block right here. All right, so I'm going to shrink this just so you can see it all on the screen at once. All right, hopefully that's not too small on your, if you're watching it on your Chromebook or something. Shrink this up. Okay, and I'll do one last run of this. Okay, so we'll run it, John. Okay, and there's, you're right, so there's our completed program. So now that you've seen this, I think what you should do is go back and type in this exact code, run it, see what you get. You know, pay real careful attention to quotations and where the pluses are, spacing, indentation. Those are all things that'll cause problems if you get errors. Read the error. It should tell you what line the error is on. And if it's not on that line that it says, then look one line up. Sometimes that's the problem. Anyway, after you get this working, then look back at the assignment posted in Google Classroom, and there's going to be just a list of some additional things I want you to add to this before you turn it in for yourself. All right. So I think this is a good stopping place, and I will talk to you later.